Now we're on a beach.
Did they swim there off the boat? What, did they just take a lifeboat?
Maybe the boat just stopped.
I mean, they did just beat up.
The boat was going to the jungle, and this is the beach on the way to the jungle.
They beat up everybody on the boat, so they just beached it. Have to explain that to the police chief when they get back to the headquarters.
Well, remember, they're basically going to Mr. X's secret island or whatever.
So, Stone, do you want to tell me why there's now a boat on that beach? I don't know how to pilot a boat. In all fairness, what if we had projectiles in this game?
Oops.
Nah, it's fine.
I'm pretty sure I just stabbed you.
No. Everybody gets a grand upper. Wake up, grand upper. Suddenly, like, kickboxer convention on the beach. Interrupted their daily run.
Their daily jaunt.
There's so many of them, like, why? What are you guys even doing here? I'm curious, is the sand covering the road? I'm guessing so. They just stopped at some point. Yeah, that's enough, asphalt.
Yep.
Nope. You know, I don't think any other game has ever really did the grab a dude, jump over them, and throw them from behind thing. No other.
Did.
I mean, no other beat 'em up game really did.
Oh, no. Probably because it was kind of awkward.
There wasn't really much point in it, other than well, to give them another throw. Which, I mean, fair enough. That's acceptable. We want to add more stuff to this game. More attacks. No. Exactly as Kokaku.
Just as Kokaku.
Golba. That dude just fucking took off like a goddamn shot.
Did you catch any of what I was saying in the other room about the trial that I was following?
No.
Okay. So, you know CM Punk, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, CM Punk, basically, he was a wrestler in WWE, I think from like, I want to say 08 till about 2014.
And then he went to UFC, I think.
Yeah, he's currently in the UFC. He's actually about to have a second fight. And that kind of factors into this to a degree. So, basically, at the time that Punk left, he was he was in really bad shape, both physically and mentally. He had been the champ. He was getting screwed over by everybody, for the most part. Legitimately, not like in the scope of a story, although that was also happening. But basically, he kind of hit he got a concussion during the Royal Rumble, and he just kind of hit his breaking point. So he basically quit the company the next day, and nobody ever saw him in a WWE ring. Pretty much the last time that anybody saw him in WWE was when he got put into a table by Kane. Yeah, towards near the end of the Royal Rumble match.
There he is. There's Sal there.
Yeah. So the reason that he was taken out of the match that way was because he had got a concussion. So that the argument over the concussion and subsequent issues was basically why he walked out. So he basically leaves the company. He'd apparently, he was sick, and he had also had like some sort of a cyst or a lump or something on him. Like he originally said it was on his back, but it was like underneath his trunks, like on his butt, basically, like his upper butt, basically. So when he left, he basically disappeared for a good few months. He didn't talk to anybody. He didn't post on social media. He showed up at like a hockey game or two, but otherwise wasn't really doing much. He wasn't in the public eye. And his wife, AJ Lee, or was going to be his wife, his fiancée, was still wrestling for the company. And so the fans, noticing that he was gone, would start chanting CM Punk, and they would even do it at AJ Lee for no obvious reason, which made absolutely no sense. But they would basically chant it when they were getting tired of the match, supposedly. Or to protest the fact that CM Punk was gone because they had no idea why he was gone. So he eventually got fired on his wedding day, no less. And he then got basically what happened is at the same time WWE 2K15 was coming out, and that game's focus was the showcase mode, one of which happened to be a match between John Cena and CM Punk. Probably it was basically one of CM Punk's greatest moments in the company at the time. So that's your apple. So yeah, so he basically was out of the company by the time that he showed up in this game. So he got a bunch of royalties for that, which he wouldn't have otherwise gotten. And he got a bunch of other concessions for one, having gotten fired at a bad time, and for two, just because there was stuff that he didn't get that he was owed in terms of his money and in terms of his royalties and stuff. So he got all that done. He got that settled. And then he's got this friend named Colt Cabana, who's an indie wrestler, wrestled for like a minute in WWE. But he does a podcast with a bunch of other indie people every now and then. And so he had CM Punk on the show. He did what we call a shoot interview, where they basically talk about what was actually happening behind the scenes at the same time that they were on TV. And he went over, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
He went over a bunch of stuff. He basically one of the things that became a big deal was there was this one match where CM Punk was booked to fight the entire three-man stable, the Shield. And there's this one guy, Roman Reigns, who they were looking at as possibly being a big deal in the future, which they're still trying.
The guy that they keep trying to push?
Yes, the guy they keep trying to push, with varying levels of difficulty, but most of the time he's received with boos. So basically, and then this is part of why he's received like that, because that was what made it really obvious that they were trying to push him. So he's talking about how they're booking this match, and they want him to basically be, the word that they kept using was, we want to make Roman look strong. They want CM Punk to win the match, but they want Roman to look strong in this three-man stable, all fighting CM Punk at once. They want him to win that match, but they want Roman to look strong at the same time. So obviously they're going to book the match. The wrestlers are putting together the match, and they're going to make it work that way. People keep coming up to Punk, asking him to make sure that Roman looks strong. And he's like, okay, what would make Roman look strong? If he won the match. But no, we want you to go over. But you got to make him look strong. So anyways, that was one of the things that he talked about. The other thing that he talked about was, that he had that cyst and how it was making him sick. And he was also dealing with a bunch of injuries that he hadn't gotten treated yet. and he basically had to come back early from a long tour of injury because they needed him to be present for whatever reason. They wanted to wrestle Chris Jericho, I guess. So this is all going on, and he ends up getting a concussion during the Royal Rumble match, and he even admits that his judgment in wanting to stay in it was not good. But he stayed in the match. He basically was stubborn and refused to get out of the match until they took him out of the match. And then he left. And so then after he quit, he went and got treated, and it turned out that the lump was some kind of either staph infection or MRSA or something, according to his words. And he got it, and the doctor in WWE, the head doctor, for whatever reason, didn't actually examine it or give it full treatment, and he asked to have it cut out or drained, and they wouldn't do it. They just kept giving him antibiotics, which just made him worse.
What a great doctor.
Yeah, that's the heart of this. So, having said all of that, the head doctor filed a defamation suit against him. And he did this with the full backing of the company, of WWE. In fact, WWE even went to the point of trying to prove that the lump didn't exist by trying to show footage of him and zooming into his back, which was really hilarious.
The butt smash.
Like, oh, look at this video of us zooming in on his butt. What the, like it was kind of like, it was hilarious. Like it was just really transparent. And wow, I am on one life. So anyways, like I said, there's this lawsuit's getting started, and so the actual lawsuit happened, the actual trial happened over the last few days. So basically, what was established, what Ammon was claiming was that the podcast and the things that Punk said on it, first of all, were apparently not true, quote unquote, and were causing, they caused Ammon, distress and caused him problems with his job. So
Perhaps
the first thing that happened was they went over. Go ahead.
Perhaps if one does their job as a doctor, right?
Right. You think so, right? I'm gonna switch. So basically, Ammon sues him, and so the first thing they established when they were doing the trial, when they were testifying to him, when he was testifying, was that he didn't really have any emotional distress, but people were calling him bad names. They were chanting Z-Pack, they're basically what they called the load of, the package of antibiotics that Punk was getting, that wasn't doing anything for him. So that was the extent of it. Like, it didn't affect his career, didn't necessarily actually cause him any kind of like emotional distress. He didn't have to get go to therapy or anything like that. He was otherwise fine. They couldn't prove it. So they still continued over the next 5 days or so to kind of go over the particulars, namely Punk's bad judgment in Rumble, which is true, which was kind of interesting because they actually went over how the match was put together, and how they operated things, basically, like how they communicated and all of that. They went into that, and then they went into what happened after Punk left, which was that he immediately went, his wife made him go to what they thought was a doctor, but it was like a doctor's assistant or somebody, and go get the lump checked out. So this guy that they met, who they thought was a doctor, apparently wasn't a doctor, was like a nurse's assistant or something, examined the lump, drained it, and gave him antibiotics for staph and MRSA, because that was what they thought it was. They didn't prove that it was. They just said it was a cyst, but they didn't say, it was pretty obvious just what it was. But he didn't get it treated because his insurance, wrestlers' insurance is all kinds of weird. So we're not even going to get into that. So they basically proved that he had no leg to stand on within like the first 3 or 4 days of it. It was just, and I don't understand how it even got to trial in the first place, because it was just ridiculous. It was spite.
How does any dumb bullshit ever get to trial?
True, because it's not the first time. Punk's interview was not the first shoot interview, nor will it ever be the last. And this is the first time that I've ever seen somebody actually pursue legal action and go all the way with it. And, you know, naturally, Punk won the case. Punk and Colt, because basically what happened is they sued Punk for saying the stuff, and they sued Colt for having him on the show, and they tried to allege that they knew that he was lying, and that the lump that he got, they got cut with, they had to get cut out, was never actually existed, because nobody could see it, even though he never actually shared it with anybody, and only like 3 people ever saw it. And one of the people, which was helpful in their case, was someone who was not a wrestling fan and had no reason to lie about what the thing was. and it was funny, was like they went to the closing arguments, and the head doctor's lawyer was still saying he didn't have a lump, he was lying, and he knew he was lying, and all this stuff. And it's like, when you listen to the interview, it's a shoot interview. He's talking from his own experience. He's not telling anything that he thinks is a lie. He's speaking from his own knowledge, which may or may not be complete. And Punk is kind of a jerk. It's true, and he admits it. And he's standoffish. He gets on people's nerves, and he's petty. But he didn't tell any lies during the interview.
Yeah.
As far as basically, he didn't know the guy was a doctor. He called him a doctor. He said it was probably staph or MRSA, and he could have been killed. But even though they never actually said that it was, but as far as he knew, he heard the guy tell him this could have been staph or MRSA. So he's thinking that must have been what it was. Logical assumption, right?
Yeah.
Oh, man, I missed the apple. Yep.
Wait, those things can hit.
Some bullshit now.
Those things can hit upwards. Jesus.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh man, that was really badly timed.
No, get out of here.
But yeah, that trial was actually really intriguing, both for the behind the scenes kind of look, and also, like I said, for me, that was when I started watching wrestling again, was leading into that. So I basically got to see Punk at like 80%. Like, he was not at full power at that point. And then he just disappeared, and we're all like, what happened? And it was all intriguing for a few months.
And then he just comes back and is like, yeah, this is totally all what happened.
Yep, this is what happened. Oops.
Nah, that's fine.
Man, I gotta rein that in. But yeah, meanwhile, Punk is supposed to be training for this. Ooh, that was a bad one. He's supposed to be training for the UFC fight, which I'll point out, he right into you.
Yeah, I know. I should have said, I should have moved, but I didn't.
Yeah, he's got a fight I think this Saturday, and he actually the first fight that he had, he got beat pretty bad. He got beat about a minute and a half, and he did not actually deliver any offense whatsoever.
So it's sort of like what's her name, Ronda Rousey's first wrestling match in a way.
Except Ronda Rousey didn't. Ronda Rousey actually had a pretty good first wrestling match, but that's because she was protected and they wrote the match around her, or her at that point lack of experience in wrestling.
Yeah.
But basically, he has been trained in MMA, and in fact that was one of the things that he trained in while he was a wrestler, in order to incorporate it into his moveset. But actual MMA is obviously very difficult to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason that he's in UFC is because he's a name. If he was just some other dude in the path that he took, he would have been in MMA, but he wouldn't have been in UFC.
Yeah.
So his first loss like that wouldn't have happened in front of like millions of people. But then he got back up and was like, I want to do that again. So he's doing it again. Hopefully he doesn't get beat as bad as he did last time.
Okay, I guess you'll throw me instead, right out of my special.
Sure, why not?
Meanwhile, Nail will just fucking reverse direction entirely, maintaining momentum the whole time.
Nail.
No. I like how this elevator door is also open for some reason. And it was open before we even arrived.
Because it's a shady underworld elevator.
I was gonna say, that doesn't seem OSHA compliant at all.
No.
You know, I remember Blaze being better than she is.
Maybe you just don't remember, right?
Yeah, probably.
She's not bad, but like her speed is her asset in this game.
And Z Kusano. I don't know if that's supposed to be a reference to something or what.
You know, I'm not really sure. I can't think of any Japanese wrestlers with that name or anything similar to it. I think they just picked some letters and went with it. He's very much more of like a Japanese, like an American style wrestler than he is a Japanese one. So.
Yeah, I was gonna say, doesn't Japanese wrestling have way more theatrics involved? Which is kind of
Not
saying something.
Really, actually, it's less theatrics. They tend to focus more on trying to make it look like an actual fight, way more than American pro wrestling tends to do. They call it strong style, so to speak, where they typically, there's typically more contact in their style, actual contact.
Here's this guy that looks like he could have been a player character. Maybe he was at some point in development, but not anymore.
But maybe in the next game, but he'll replace some other dude.
And it will totally not be for any particular reason whatsoever.
No reason at all. It's for fans.
Although I think both Ash and Sheva were playable in the Japanese version.
Yeah.
Here we are, the guy with the gun again, and it's even worse than the last time.
The man with the machine gun.
Yeah, and it's even worse this time. The game is now fast enough to compensate for the fact that he's got a gun. Like, look at that shit. He just keeps shooting.
You kind of have to get behind him. That's usually how I play it. Try to get behind him, or like when I say behind him, I mean vertically, as opposed to horizontally.
Yeah.
Except when he gets at the very top of the screen like that.
I mean,
I actually think in this game you can block the bullets too, if you're jump attacking at the right time. I seem to recall that being a thing anyway.
I feel like he's kind of like predisposed toward going toward the corner just so he can sweep the screen.
Yeah. I was like, this. I already knew I was in a bad spot to be. Gotcha.
Bleh. And then some dude just ran in and uppercut him right out the window.
Mm-hmm.
And then Adam gets to be in the game again.
Sure, why not?
Yeah.
You okay over there?
Yeah. Wait, your middle name starts with an X?
It doesn't. That's just what I put in.
Oh.
I don't know. I started doing it. I think I hit it by accident when I was playing DDR, and I was like, oh, I like that. I'm going to keep on doing that.
Talk Uchimura. Shout DW.
Shout, oh.
Adam all like, hey, you guys came to rescue me. Does that mean I get to be in the game now? Axel just laughs and shuts the door. Sorry, Adam, you don't get to be in any more games. I feel like being chained to the wall with your arms like that, the last thing I'd want is for somebody to do the fireman carry with me. Like, man, I think I'll just walk and let my arms hang here limply. Maxwell, well, I'm gonna leave. It was fun being in this series, I guess. Back in the days when you can just throw like 30 people at a game, like, here you go, there's a game. I wonder what Team Streets of Rage is doing now.
They probably, I don't think any of them are, I would imagine most of them probably aren't even working for the company anymore. We know Koshiro doesn't work for the company anymore.
Yeah, he's been freelance for a long time, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Which is probably fair. Because, like, if I were Yuzo Koshiro, I'd be like, everybody deserves to have my musical composition here. Not just whichever console maker I'm working for at the time. And then we beat Streets of Rage 2.
Yep. Not a long game. It's actually, like I said, it's actually a lot faster and a lot shorter than the first game.
Yeah, the first game just feels so much longer because it's so slow.
Yeah, and we do not have time to try to beat Streets of Rage 3.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Well, I mean, you don't, but I do.
Yeah, I know I definitely don't.